Recording.
Hello guys, welcome back. So in this session, today's session, I'm going to cover Beanshell scripting. I'm going to start Beanshell scripting and see some like some scenarios and when and where we should use these Beanshell elements, right? So first, let me go to the corresponding slide. So basically, when if you in JMeter, if you want to write any custom coding, then you need to use these Beanshell elements. Beanshell are JSR223 elements, right? So as I mentioned here, so Beanshell JSR223 elements are useful to implement any custom simple logic or simple custom logic or custom coding, right? Now, let me explain when and where we should write this custom coding. Okay, in what cases we need to write custom coding and all. So let's say this, right? So first, let me give the context like where we need to write custom coding and how to write that custom coding. We'll see that in the coming up sessions. All right. Now, let's say, for instance, you have a script requirement like this. So I will take a couple of examples to explain this for you. So I will take 2 to 3 examples for you, first of all. So first one, I will go ahead with the popular web tools application. And then I will explain you one more scenario where you need to write custom coding. Okay, that is flood IO. I'll explain both these cases, like where we should, and try to explain like where we should write this custom coding and how to write the custom coding. Clear this. Now, so if you want to write a script in our, if you want to write any custom logic or our own coding, right? So basically we need this either Beanshell or JSR223 elements. So first of all, let me show you how. Okay. So first, let me explain the context, like where do we need to write. So for that, what I will do, first I will go to, WebTools application itself, because everyone is aware of this WebTools application. All right. And see the script or see the business scenario, right? Which is cheapest flight ticket booking. Let's say, for instance, so in WebTools, while booking a flight ticket, let's say, for instance, you want to make a script to book a flight ticket with lowest cost, right? You need to book a ticket for the lowest cost. So let me open the application and quickly show you that. I'll log in with the default username and password, which is Jojo Bean. Right? And go to flights. Let's say, for instance, you are randomly selecting your departure and arrival city, and you are trying to book a ticket. Right? Now see here. So the ticket cost, the last column shows you the ticket cost, each ticket cost. So the first ticket cost is $251, second one is $224, third one is $238, and the fourth one is $206. And let's say, for instance, you have a requirement like this. Most of the users try to book a ticket with lowest cost, right? So you want to create a script to book a ticket with lowest cost, or you want to book a flight ticket for the flight for which it is having lowest cost, which is $206 in this case, right? Between Denver to Los Angeles, this is the total lowest ticket cost, isn't it? So previously what we have done, like we selected the random flight, we selected the flight randomly, we have gone ahead with the ticket booking, isn't it? We correlated the outbound flight and we did it. So no need to write, we did not come across any requirement to write any custom code. And when a real user is booking a ticket, obviously, so he will apply his common sense and he will figure out like what is the out of these 4 values. We know what is the lowest ticket cost. But how to make this happen in the script, or how to make our script book a ticket for cheapest flight for any 2 cities. Let's say, for instance, this is for Denver to Los Angeles. Now, let's say, for instance, you are booking a ticket from some other location to some other location, Los Angeles to San Francisco. Again, see here, the lowest ticket cost is $49. So you have to book a ticket for this one as per this requirement, guys. Let me go to the scripting scenario sheet. So select flight with lowest ticket cost, isn't it? Right? So in such cases, we need to write some custom coding. So this is one scenario in which you need to write custom coding. And another scenario, I'll explain you another scenario. So for instance, you have an application called flood.io. Hold on. Just Google search like this, you'll get land upon this page, challenge.flood.io. So it's a scripting challenge which gives you some scripting challenge. Okay. So I have step-by-step navigation in the scripting scenario sheet as well. So let me quickly show you that. So at the last, you see that one. At the end of the index page, you see that one. So navigate to flood.io scripting challenge page. Challenge page, right? By going to this URL and click on start, and a drop down with the question appears. Select age from the drop down. Let me show you on the application. So click on the start button, and here you get a drop down with age, and there is a question on the top saying how old are you, right? And you are having numbers from 18 to 100, isn't it? Now, so let's say you select your age, some number from this drop down, and click on next. Now see here, read this instruction. So please select and enter the largest order value below. So you have some order values and order IDs and order description. Out of these, you need to select the largest order value, right? This is quite a bit opposite to the Web2's cheapest flight ticket scenario. Here we need to select the lowest flight ticket. Here we need to select the largest order value out of these 5 values. Clear guys? So let me show you. So obviously like 240 is the highest value out of all these order values. So you need to enter that order value here and select also. So you need to do both these actions as per the instructions observed here. Please select and enter the largest order value below. So you need to select as well as you need to enter that largest order value over here and click next, right? Now when you are doing manually, so you will we will apply our common sense, and we will enter that value. We will select the largest order value, right? So this is the flow, the complete flow of the application is. So where so I have given the step by step navigation out here. So but what if we want to make the script, what if we want to make our JMeter script behave in the same way, right? Let's say randomly, you can select any number randomly. It doesn't validate anything. Right? And again, see, observe here, the highest value is at the top now. Previously, it's at the bottom. So these numbers changes every time. So now the largest value is at the top of the page, right? Just like, how our, if you go to Web2's application, right? So that lowest ticket cost depends on the departure and arrival city, isn't it? Here it is 49, right? And if you select some other cities, let's select some other city, right? And now see here, this is the lowest ticket cost. 239 is the lowest ticket cost, isn't it? And if is so obviously, like, when from it depends on the city, city to city that you are selecting. Now the lowest ticket cost is 165. So you have to we have to book the ticket for evening flight. Sorry, we need to book the ticket with the lowest ticket cost. So we will select, like this one. Obviously, a real-time user will select if he is interested to book a ticket with lowest flight. He will select the last one, which is 165 in this case, and he will continue with the payment. And in this case, like, you will see, like, if a real world user is doing this, right? So we apply this comment, we see like what are the numbers, and we identify what is the highest order value here in this case, and we click on next, isn't it? Now if you want to make our script do this, right? The same thing, right? That is where this custom coding or custom logic comes into picture, or that is where we need to write some custom coding in JMeter. Is it clear, guys? I hope the context is set. Now, right, the context is set on where do we need to write the custom code. And not only this one, suppose if you want to write some, suppose you have some 5,000 user IDs, and you want to validate all the user IDs and passwords and check whether if all the passwords are working or not, all the credentials are working or not. and you want to segregate those valid user IDs and invalid user IDs. Let's say, for instance, right? You have 5,000 credentials, and credentials may expire after some time, isn't it? So you want to run a test. Before that, you want to verify whether all the credentials are working fine, and you want to write the working credentials into one file and expired credentials into another file. So basically, you need to do some file operations in JMeter, and you will open a file and you will write all the credentials, working credentials, into one file. So you, for that, you will make one simple script like for homepage, login and logout. If you are able to log in, if login is successful, right? Successful, you need to write those credentials into valid credentials file. Valid credentials, let's say, right? .csv. Or if login is not successful, right? You need to write those credentials into invalid credentials file. Another file called invalid credentials. Right. So in all, in all such cases, we need to write some custom coding for this, right? So we need to open a file and we need to write into that file. We need to open a file in append mode and we need to close the file after each writing, or you need to append it continuously once you are done with writing. So you will close the file. So in such cases, so this is what I mean to say custom coding, right? Now I hope like context is set now, clear. And what is now, let's understand for this custom coding, we have two options in JMeter, which is Beanshell and JSR223 elements. There are two elements which provision this custom coding. One is Beanshell element, the other one is JSR223 elements, right? Now I'll show what is the difference between Beanshell and JSR223 also. First, let's explore Beanshell. So what is Beanshell? So Beanshell is a Java-like scripting language that runs on JRE, right? So where JRE stands for Java Runtime Environment. Let me write it down in your notes. Obviously, so if you are having JMeter on our machine, running JMeter on our machine, we should be having JRE, Java Runtime Environment. We installed Java before starting with JMeter, right? So Beanshell is a Java-like scripting language that runs on JRE, right? And Beanshell can dynamically execute standard Java syntax. It can dynamically execute standard Java syntax, and there are different types of Beanshell elements. Not so important, guys. So I'll tell you, like Beanshell is a loosely typed language. That means no need of type declaration. Now, what is type declaration? We'll explain that. No need of type declaration. Variable type. Let me elaborate this. Variable type declaration. I'll explain what is that variable type declaration and what is meant by loosely typed language. Sorry, there's a typo here. Yeah. And now these are the different Beanshell elements. We have Beanshell samplers, Beanshell preprocessor, postprocessors, timers, assertions, and listeners. These are the different Beanshell elements. So we will see like when and where and when we use each of these elements. All right. Now, so first let's understand like what is meant by loosely typed language. Or else first let me explain what is the difference between Beanshell and JSR223 elements. Right. So I will open one test plan and add a thread group first of all, and add. So first of all, let me show you the different Beanshell elements. If you go to sampler, there is something called Beanshell sampler. If you go to preprocessor section, there you have something called Beanshell preprocessor. If you go to postprocessor, under postprocessor, you have different postprocessors, in which like Beanshell postprocessor is one of the elements. In the same way, in assertions also you have Beanshell assertion, right? In timers also you have Beanshell timer, JSR223 timer. Observe here. So in postprocessors you have Beanshell postprocessor as well as JSR223 postprocessor. Preprocessors also you have JSR223 preprocessor as well as Beanshell preprocessor. Samplers, under sampler section also you have Beanshell sampler, right? You have Beanshell sampler and JSR223 sampler. So what is the difference between Beanshell and the JSR223 elements? First, let's understand that. Okay, for that, I will add one I'll add one sampler called Beanshell Sampler. This is Beanshell Sampler, right? And one JSR223, or else hold on. Let me add one Postprocessor because you are more familiar with Postprocessor already. So I'll add one Beanshell Postprocessor as well as Postprocessor, JSR223 Postprocessor. Right. Yeah. Now, main difference between Beanshell and JSR223 Elements is you can observe the difference in samplers also, for that matter. JSR223 Sampler. So the main difference between this Beanshell and JSR223 Elements is, so if you observe here, in Beanshell Postprocessor, you don't have, I will show you quickly both of these, Beanshell Postprocessor and JSR223 Postprocessor, right? So if you observe JSR223 Postprocessor, you have an option to choose the language over here, right? See here, you have a option to choose the language. You can choose the language like Groovy or Java, JavaScript, and so on. Clear guys. Nashorn is, I think this is engine is getting deprecated. Not that important. So first, let's understand what is the difference between. So very important interview question guys. What is the difference between Beanshell element and Beanshell and JSR223 elements? So JSR223 provides a language option. We can choose the language in which we can write the custom coding, right? Whereas Beanshell elements, any of the Beanshell elements doesn't provide any language option, but it uses Java-like syntax. So Beanshell uses Java-like syntax, and here I have highlighted it. Beanshell is Java-like scripting language that runs on JRV, right? I hope it is clear now. What is the main difference? That is the main difference, important difference between Beanshell and JSR223 elements. Clear. Now let's understand what is this loosely typed language, right? So for that, I need to give some basics of any programming language. Let's say, for example, you take any language like C or Java, okay? And suppose you are writing a program for adding two numbers, okay? Java program to add two numbers. Let's say, for instance, you want to write a Java program to add two numbers, isn't it? So now you will have to. So it will look something like this. So you will declare a variable here, int x. Let's say, for instance, int x means we are declaring x as an integer variable. So this is called as variable type declaration. This is called as variable type declaration. Let me write it down in your notes. Variable type declaration. So that means, so it will look something like this: int x, right? Or int y, right? So we will declare, whether what type of variable this is x and y is. Here we are declaring them as an integer variables, right? In the same way, so you can declare some string variables. Let me show you some example programs so that you can easily relate it. Sum of numbers in Java. This is a program to add two numbers in Java. So here you can see n1 is number 1 and n2 is number 2, and both are declared as an integer variables, right? And sum is also would be obviously an integer, right? So this is called as type declaration, variable type declaration. Or if you take any C language, let's take C language to add two numbers. So even here also, a C program to add two integers. So let me show you quickly some sample program to add two numbers. So observe here, number 1 is declared as an integer, as well as number 2 is also declared as an integer, and sum of these two numbers also is declared as an integer. So there is some variable type declaration here in C language or Java language. However, for in Beanshell, right? So in Beanshell scripting, that is a loosely typed language. So that means we need not define the variable type declaration. We need not mention the variable type declaration. So that is what loosely typed language means. Okay. Now, so in the next slide, I have kept some screenshot of a Beanshell sampler to just show you how to write, how to add a Beanshell sampler and where to write the code. Observe here, I have a thread group. To that, I added a Beanshell sampler. And this is where you need to write the script, write your custom coding or custom logic. So whatever you want to write, any custom coding, right? This is your custom coding goes in here. And observe here at the bottom, you have something, some variables, read the last statement. The following variables are defined for the script, that is sample result, response code, response message, each success label, etc., etc. Right? So now, we don't use, mostly we don't use all of these. The most popularly, I will cover most popularly used one. Okay, let me go to the slide once and observe here. Okay, sorry, let me clear this lines. Yeah. So these are the important variables, accessible for Beanshell in order of their usability. Order of their usability means we mostly use these variables called vars, props, and log. Right? That's why I have highlighted in a different color. Now let's understand, what is this vars? Var stands for geometry variables. Okay. Simply var stands for geometry variables. What does they do? They give read and write access to the variables. Using this vars variable, we can write some value, read some value from a variable, or write some value to a variable. So that's what this means. Gives read write access to the variables. We can create new variables, change existing ones, and obtain properties of their variables. So we'll see how to create a variable, how to change an existing one, how to update a value, and all. We'll see that in the coming up session. So first of all, important variables, which are accessible from Beanshell is vars, props, and log. Right? Now let's see some example. What is this vars and what is this all this story? So before that, let me check. Yeah, in this next slide, I have kept some JSR223 snapshot, so that if you this is for your quick reference case. So no need to go to launch JMeter and add a JSR223 sampler. You can go refer to the PPT and observe that the main difference between these two is this language option. JSR223 provides a language option. You can choose the language in which you want to write any custom coding, right? So that is the main difference. Now coming back to these variables. Let's say, for instance, I'll take a new script. Let me show you one simple usage of Beanshell element or Beanshell sampler or preprocessor or postprocessor. We'll explore further in the coming up sessions. So I will add a thread group first, and then to that I'll add a sampler called Beanshell sampler. Let me add a sampler called Beanshell sampler. Right? Now this is where your script should go into, or this is where you will write your custom coding. Right? Let me highlight it. So in this script part. And observe here, so we also discussed about this. So following variables are defined for the script, out of which important ones are these vars, props, and log. Right? Somehow they gave in the last, but these are most popularly used, mostly used variables. Right? Okay. Now let me have this clear the trying. Let's say, for instance, I am declaring some variable here where URL. Okay. I'm so as I told right just now. So Beanshell scripting is a loosely typed language. No need of Beanshell scripting. Okay, is a Java like scripting language. Scripting language and loosely typed. Right, language. Sorry, loose type language means no need of that means no need of type declaration, no need of variable type declaration. Let's observe here, you can write a comment like this. Okay. So that's the reason I am writing it over here. You can keep a double slash and you can write a comment and observe here comments are in green color as in most of the tools. comments would be in green color. So if you are seeing something in green color, that means like this is the that confirms that you can comment out a line using double slash. Now let's say I have declared a variable called URL. Okay. Now I want to insert some variable into that URL. I want to insert some value into that URL. So for that, how you can do is vars. You can use vars variable. This one, let me highlight it. So I am using this vars variable. Okay, where var stands for JMeter variables, guys. Okay, I mentioned it here. Vars means JMeter variables, and what they give, it gives read and write access to the variables, right? Let me see how. Let me show you how to use that. So if I want to write some value into a variable, I will use I have to use a method called put method, right? And I want to insert some value into the variable. Let's say, for instance, www.gmail.com. I want to insert some value into that variable. Okay. So I'm just checking the syntax. And please remember, like you have to end all the statements with a semicolon. Okay. Now, let's say, for instance, I have a HTTP request. Let me add a HTTP request below this. And I want to send a request to that Gmail over here. So you already know that if you want to use any variable, if you want to pass any variable, JMeter variable, you have to give it like this, dollar curly brace. Let me make it big and let me zoom in. Right? So URL. So you better copy paste the variable name so that there will not be any typos or case sensitive things or something, right? Issues or something. Let's say, for instance, now I'm passing that, so I want to send a request to this URL, which is where URL value is gmail.com, right? And one more thing, I will use, let me use this log also. So observe here, we have another variable, JMeter variable called log. And if you want to, basically, this will be used when you want to write a message into the output file or to the log file. Okay. So value stored in the variable URL, right? Double quotes, keep whatever custom message you want to keep in double quotes, and use plus symbol as an for string concatenation, and type vars dot get of URL. Okay, so let me see how it works. Okay, so this is for the closing brace for this, and let me close that other one also. All right, so I have ended with a semicolon. Now let's replay the script once. Okay, so let me save it. Beanshell sampler as Beanshell sampler demo. All right, now observe here what happens in Beanshell sampler. We wrote some custom code and we used some variables over here, and we are using that variable in the next request, right? Now let me replay the script. So just to see the results, test results, I'm going to add a listener called view results tree. As usual, we use listener in a lot of all the previous scripts that we practiced, right? That you have worked on. Now let me replay the script now. Now what is the Beanshell sampler? See here. Of course, as this is a script, right? It doesn't contain, if you go to request, it contains the script, whatever you have written. And now see the HTTP request. Let's observe the HTTP request and see what request has went to the servers, right? Now see here, it sent, if you go to the request and request body, you can see that there is this request was a request was sent to gmail.com. And how did it work, guys? So we defined that variable in the Beanshell sampler, and we passed that variable over here, isn't it? You can use any of these examples. Let's say, for instance, instead of gmail.com, you can use google.com. Okay, you can use google.com. Let me replay this. Let me refresh, save the script, and replay the script. Now you can see that it has a get request was sent to google.com. Observe here, I just passed on the URL here, and HTTP request is by default get method over here, isn't it? And it took the value from the Beanshell this URL variable was used, and and let me show you this log message where this why did we write this, or what is the purpose of this log message. So you can see that if you go to log viewer, you can either, for going to log viewer, you can either click on this triangle symbol on the top right, okay, or else you can use log.info, one second, or else you can use, go to tools and options, enable log viewer, right? Both are the same base. So even if you click on options and let me close this log viewer first. If you go here, go to options and click log viewer, you will get this log viewer window. Clear, guys? Seems like there is some issue. Yeah, no. So it works fine. See, observe here. This is the result of this statement, value stored in the variable URL is www.google.com, right? So this is the purpose of this log.info message, right? I used a log variable, and info means it is an informational message. If you want to write some informational message into the log file, we use this info method, right? So there are different log levels in Java. Basically, like as this is developed using Beanshell is a Java-like scripting language, right? We already mentioned that. So it inherits Java properties and Java concepts. Clear, guys? And now you can see that some message is written to the log file. I'll do one thing. I will see, observe here. This got there is no space in between. If you want to insert space, after plus symbol, give some double quotes again, empty character, right, and plus, right? Now what it will do is, like, it will insert one space. If you want to insert two spaces, give two spaces here. And now let me replay the script. Let me clear everything and let me replay the script. Now you can see that there are two spaces inside between. I'll do one thing. I'll give a colon also over here. Right. Now you can see here. So it has printed that Beanshell element has printed that line value stored in the variable URL. And it is sending that URL value, that variable value over here. We are using that variable value over here. And you can also see that a GET request was sent to google.com, right? So this is, and you can write, either use Beanshell Sampler or you can use Beanshell Preprocessor also. Let me show that as well. So I'm adding a preprocessor now, which is Beanshell Preprocessor. First, I will explore Beanshell Preprocessor, and observe here, I'm copying the same code into a Beanshell Preprocessor, right? So we haven't used preprocessor still now in the training, right? So I'm, I'm now in this session, we will get to know like what is the difference between a preprocessor and a postprocessor, and how to use a preprocessor. Postprocessor you already used. We used multiple times. We used boundary extractor, regular expression extractor, and all this. Now I will comment out this. I'll comment out that Beanshell sampler. Observe here, I added a preprocessor, Beanshell preprocessor to the HTTP request. So chronologically, it looks like first HTTP request will be executed, but preprocessor will be executed, right? Chronologically. But however, so when you add a preprocessor, as this is a preprocessor element, first this preprocessor will be executed, and then this request will be executed. Let me quickly show you that. Okay. So we kept the same code in Beanshell preprocessor. Now, basically, what happens now? Let's see this. Yeah, now see here. Let's see the view results tree. Observe here. So HTTP request is executed here. It is showing only HTTP request. However, observe here, google.com, a request was sent to google.com, and where this google.com is, declared over here. Observe here, we kept a variable in the URL. We stored a value called google.com, right? And even though it looks chronologically, like it looks like that first the order will not be like this. Because it is a preprocessor, first this preprocessor will be executed, and then the sampler will be executed. Let me quickly, so this we already discussed that in the test plan elements execution order, JMeter test plan elements execution order. So if you observe here, first config elements will be executed, and then preprocessors will be executed, and then comes samplers. After preprocessors, of course, if you have timers, timers will be executed, and then samplers will be executed. So this is the execution order of JMeter elements. As per the execution order, first preprocessor will be executed here, and it will, this URL value will become google.com, right? The value of this URL, of this variable URL, will be google.com, and then the sampler will be executed, and this will be passed over here. And if you want to see, if you see here, observe here, if you observe here, right? So see, observe, you can see the time also, you can check, you can cross verify with this timestamp, with the help of the timestamp also. Observe here, this statement was executed at what time, or this preprocessor was executed at 3 to 49 seconds, 49 seconds, 191 milliseconds, isn't it? And now if you see the request, right, HTTP request, right, you can see the time where at what time it is executed. Sample start at 3 to 49. Of course, here we are not seeing the difference because it is in milliseconds. Okay, I'll do one thing. Okay, but like I'm sure that if you observe these timings, right? So at 191 this is executed. Yeah, here it is basically, here it is not showing time in milliseconds. That way I cannot prove it here. But as we have seen, hold on 1 second, let me check if there are any request orders where it is showing the time. All right, okay. Anyways, here also we are not seeing the time in milliseconds. Anyways, so basically as per this JMeter execution order, so first preprocess will be if there are any config elements, first config elements will be executed. If there are no config elements, next preprocessors will be executed. So in that way, our Beanshell preprocessor is executed now here. First this will be executed, and then HTTP request will be executed. If this is not get executed, obviously this request will fail, guys, isn't it? This request will obviously fail if it is not executed. Suppose if you write the same code in Postprocessor, it will not work, right? Let me show you that, right? If you write the same code in a Postprocessor, obviously that won't work. Let me disable this preprocessor, and now your HTTP request should fail now. Let me replay the script, save the script, replay the script, right? Your HTTP request failed, observe here, because Postprocessor will be executed after samplers, isn't it? This is a sampler and this is a postprocessor. So postprocessor will be executed obviously after the samplers are executed. Right here you can see after samplers are executed, postprocessors will be executed. So that is why this request has failed now. This request has failed, isn't it? Because it doesn't know what is the value of that URL and it cannot send a request to that. That is why this request has failed. Clear case, it doesn't know what is this dollar symbol, curly brace and URL because you kept into a post processor. So this will not work. Now, I think this clarifies like what is the difference between a pre-processor and a post processor. But if we enable this one now, right, this should work. Right, let me clear this and right, now you can see that HTTP request has passed because first this way, the preprocessor will be executed first and then HTTP request will be executed. And when preprocessor is executed, URL, this variable will have some value and that value get passed over here. Clear this? I stop it here for today. So this is an introduction to Beanshell. Why do we need to write the custom coding and in what cases we will write custom coding and like how to write the custom coding, right? We'll stop it here and we will explore further like what are I'll take some scripting examples and a few more examples and I'll try to explain how to write a Beanshell scripting or how to write Beanshell scripting. We'll discuss that in details in further and how to use this log method, props method and all this. I'll explain that in the coming up sessions.